Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie Rosen, pronouns she, her, or they, them. Description of what I look like. I'm a white woman with long red hair, the flannel shirt and canvas jacket, big headphones, and a blurred background of my home basement office. I work at the University of Michigan Library as accessibility strategist and librarian for disability studies. And I would like to personally welcome you to the closing session of this year's conference, Toward an Anti-Ableist Academy, Advancing Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility at U of M. Throughout the month of October, this conference has included 11 online sessions, each between 60 and 90 minutes, as part of the Disability Community Month activities. These 11 sessions focus on the progress made and the work still to be done on recommendations to close accessibility gaps across campus for disabled students, faculty, and staff at U of M. I was part of the idea board. I served on the groups focused on physical accessibility and on disability studies as an academic program. Today, I am pleased to welcome you to the Embracing Disability Culture session. And I will now pass it over to my friend and colleague, Phil Deaton, the Digital Information Accessibility Coordinator for the Office of Institutional Equity.
Thanks, Stephanie. This is Phil Deaton. As Stephanie mentioned, I work in, actually we were recently renamed the Equity, Civil Rights, and Title IX Office as our Digital Information Accessibility Coordinator. And my pronouns are he, him, and I am a white male with curly brown hair and glasses, wearing a white patterned shirt and a headset. And I am going to pass it over next to Marjorie.
Hello, my name is Marjorie Herbert. I am a PhD student in the linguistics department at UM. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. I am a assigned female at birth person with long dyed hair. I am currently in a public library with some bookshelves behind me, and I'm in my 30s. I am going to go ahead and pass it over to Pam, my friend and colleague.
Thanks, Marjorie. Hello, my name is Pam McGinty. I'm the Student Idea Board Program Manager in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a white woman with dark brown curly hair, wearing a purple and blue shirt, silver Petoskey Stone, Michigan State earrings, and my background is beige with the Michigan logo. I'm looking forward to talking with you today. I will now pass the mic over to Ashley.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley Wiseman. I work for the Global Scholars Program, and I am the co-chair of Disability Culture at the University of Michigan. I have straight, long brown hair. I am white. I use she, her pronouns. I am wearing dark pink glasses and a maroon shirt, and I'm in front of a blue periwinkle kind of colored virtual background. So I would like to start us off with a presentation. So we are going to share some slides. Wonderful. So our cover slide shows our DC UM logo. Also at this time, I'm going to invite all of our presenters back to the screen. So our logo consists of about 10 silhouetted diverse bodies, including some people using wheelchairs, crutches, and canes. Translucent, round, overlapping speech bubbles in various shades of blues, purples, pinks, yellows, and greens float above the silhouettes. One purple speech bubble contains the Braille symbol for power. A yellow speech bubble contains the image of a keyboard or augmentative and alternative communication device, or an AAC device. A green speech bubble contains the ASL sign for a friendly "I love you." And below the silhouettes is text that reads "Disability Culture at the University of Michigan." Next slide, please. The remainder of our slides all have the same design: a white background with the colorful speech bubbles from our logo in the upper left corner. The bottom of the slide is a Michigan blue banner with silhouetted disabled people from our logo in Michigan maize on the left, with white text that reads DC at UM, Disability Culture at the University of Michigan. Before we get started, let us acknowledge that the University of Michigan is built on the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, the Council of the Three Fires, the Ottawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi, as well as the Wyandot people. Today, we benefit from access to land and resources originally gained through a coercive treaty that was supposed to ensure reciprocity, mutual respect, and access to education. Disability justice necessarily includes dismantling settler colonialism and white supremacy. It means dismantling the racist, ableist beliefs that the white settler body mind is the most capable and the most valuable. Next slide, please. I'd like to tell you a little bit about disability culture at U of M, or DCUM. We are a cross-disability group dedicated to bringing disabled students, staff, faculty, community members, and our allies together in order to build a prideful community that centers disability justice and disability culture as it intersects with our other identities. We foster friendships, coordinate events, and we work toward the establishment of a disability cultural center at the University of Michigan. This slide hyperlinks to disability justice resources that were developed by a group called Sins Invalid, and they will be available as supplemental materials in the shared Google folder after our presentation. And now I'm going to turn it over to Pam to talk to us about two of the most commonly used models for understanding disability.
Thanks, Ashley. So what is disability? Medical model. In general, there are two models of disability that people often mention in disability studies. The first that we tend to caution again is the medical model. This is the idea that disability is a biological problem within an individual that needs to be fixed or cured. The goal of this model is to make the individual more like the dominant, non-disabled identity group. Next slide, please. What is disability? The social model. The second model, while some limited, is the one we tend to use in disability communities. This is the social model of disability. This model, at its core, suggests that disability is socially constructed, that it's not essential to the body, but rather endemic to the social institutions in which the body exists. It's not given that a particular trait will result in being disabled or perceived as disabled. The social model points us to think about culture and climate. Let's talk about disability climate at the UMich. Next slide, please. Disability at Michigan. In 2016, the university conducted an institution-wide campus climate survey. About 1/3 of disabled staff respondents and 1/2 of disabled student respondents reported that they experienced at least one incident of disability-based discrimination at the University of Michigan in the previous year. The survey also found that disabled students, staff, and faculty respondents were less likely to feel valued, less likely to feel a sense of belonging, and less likely to feel as if they were thriving and growing at our institution. These types of climate issues are the result of systemic ableism, and I'm going to turn it over to Marjorie to help us understand what we mean by ableism.
There are many definitions of ableism. We want to uplift Talila T.L. Lewis and Community's 2021 working definition, which describes ableism as a system that places value on people's bodies and minds based on societally constructed ideas of normality, intelligence, excellence, desirability, and productivity. These constructed ideas are deeply rooted in anti-Blackness, eugenics, misogyny, colonialism, imperialism, and capitalism. It leads to people and society determining who is valuable and worthy based on language, appearance, religion, and or their ability to satisfactorily produce or reproduce, excel, and behave, quote unquote. So how do we begin to dismantle something so ubiquitous and so tied up in other forms of systemic oppression? In DC at we align with the disability justice movement. So next slide, please. So what is disability justice? Biapan Samrasima explains that the term disability justice was originally coined by disabled Black, brown, queer, and trans people in reaction to the exclusion of multiply marginalized people from traditional disability movements and to ableism within activist spaces. The people involved in the creation of this framework comprise the Disability Justice Collective. Next slide, please. So, more about disability justice. According to Sens Invalid, a disability justice performing arts group, at its core, the disability rights framework centers people who can achieve status, power, and access through a legal or rights-based framework, which we know is not possible for many disabled people or appropriate for all situations. Rights-based strategies often address the symptoms of inequity, but not the root. The root of disability oppression is ableism, and we must work to understand it, combat it, and create alternative practices rooted in justice. Our group believes that establishing a disability cultural center at is imperative to understanding ableism, combating it, and creating justice-based alternative practices. I'm going to turn it over to Phil now to tell us more about disability cultural centers.
Thank you, Marjorie, Pam, and Ashley for introducing the disability language and context that's important here. So what are disability cultural centers? In 2019, our group hosted a panel on disability culture in higher education. One of our panelists, Liz Thompson, helped establish the DCC, at the University of Illinois, Chicago, and wrote their dissertation on the new phenomena of disability cultural centers in the United States. Liz noted that DCCs are physical space for community building with an intersectional approach that are intentionally accessible in terms of furniture, adjustable lighting, and fragrance-free choices. They are meant to bring disabled faculty, staff, students, and community members together through any number of shared activities like the arts, dance, film screenings, and book clubs. And they often foster outreach and build allyship with other communities. If you can advance to the next slide, please, Stephanie. So a disability cultural center would be unlike other disability resources already available on campus. If you can click here, there you go. Service offices like Services for Students with Disabilities operate primarily on a medical model of disability. Their primary charge is important and necessary, and it is to ensure that the institution is compliant with disability laws by providing reasonable individual accommodations so that individuals can access the existing environment. Typically, these service offices require medical documentation of an impairment for a student to receive services. Although service offices can and do go beyond legal compliance, ultimately their primary focus has to be on laws and documentation in many ways, and not on creating a space that is focused on disability identity and culture development. DCCs, disability cultural centers, on the other hand, operate using more of the social model. They are open to the campus and community without medical documentation. And as mentioned on the previous slide, are concerned with building community, dismantling ableism, and promoting intersectional justice. DCCs are culture and identity affirming and can help to inform community expectations around identity issues. I'm going to turn it back over to Marjorie to talk about how DCCs are crucial to DEI work.
Thank you, Phil. If you could go ahead and click twice, Stephanie, I'd like to have all the text on the screen. Oops, 3 times. Thank you. Okay. As I touched on briefly in its definition, ableism, as so eloquently stated by Talila T.L. Lewis, is inherently anti-Black, especially in the US, since it is fundamentally necessary to the arguments used to justify the enslavement of Black people in our country's history. If you'd like to read more about that idea, we've hyperlinked to an article by T.L. Lewis, which will also be available in our resource folder in Google Drive. The following excerpt on the right of the screen is a quote by Mia Mingus. It illustrates how ableism and racism as oppressive forces are interlocking, meaning they're dependent on one another. The quote reads, "Ableism set the stage for communities of color," and this is my interjection, specifically Black communities in our country's history, to be understood as less capable, smart, or intelligent, and therefore, quote unquote, naturally fit for slave labor. As a predominantly white university in the US, UM has a duty to address this intersection, ableism and anti-Black racism, at an institutional level. Next slide, please. So continuing along these lines, to reiterate, The principles of disability justice and the objective of dismantling ableism within our community are necessary components of DEI work. And in order for UM's DEI initiative to ultimately be successful, they need to be taken more seriously at a systematic, programmatic level. Stephanie, could I get you to click one more time? Great, wonderful. So this is also why we would all benefit as members of the UM community from what a disability cultural center would bring. Because crucially, you don't have to be disabled to experience the effects of ableism. And ableism is crucial to other systems of oppression. So I'm continuing the excerpted quote from Mia Mingus that appeared on the previous slide. So to reiterate, ableism sets the stage for is the setup, and then here's a list of other items. Queer and trans people to be institutionalized as mentally disabled. Women's bodies to be used to produce children when, where, and how men needed them. Immigrants to be thought of as quote unquote a disease that we must quote unquote cure because it is quote unquote weakening our country. Among a few other important points I don't have time to make in this presentation. Because disability culturals can be invaluable to campus DEI efforts, the Student Idea Board recommended establishing one in its final report. Phil, can you tell us more about this recommendation?
Thanks, Marjorie, for expanding on disability justice and intersectionality. So folks, if you've attended any other anti-ableism in the Academy events this month, you are probably somewhat familiar with the Student Idea Board report, at least. Members from the UM Ann Arbor and Michigan Medicine got together to discuss disability issues impacting folks here at the university. And one of the categories for these recommendations was related to culture. Specifically, the committee wrote, "We consider the establishment of a Disability Cultural Center, DCC, to be our core recommendation, as it supports the sustained work that is the spirit of all of our other recommendations. Furthermore, we believe that a DCC is the only way to truly make the work of improving the climate for students with disabilities and fostering disability culture sustainable in the long term." You can view the full Idea Board recommendations on the disability website, which is linked to here. So disability culture is discussed in the Student Idea Board recommendations at length. And in many ways, this conference series is kind of a continuation or sequel to some of that work. We believe that disability culture and identity having a space in a cultural or identity center would improve the culture around disability issues on campus and ultimately positively impact recruitment and retention of disabled staff, students, and faculty, and our overall disability compliance efforts. Establishing a DCC would create a natural connection between disabled advocates and allies and disability leadership. And that would help better represent the needs of the disability constituencies that we have on campus in policies and practices. And it would ensure that culture and identity are core to our approach as we consider disability issues. So in fact, 2 DC at members received a grant to help identify networks of disability inclusion advocates at Michigan. And I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie Rosen, DC at member and one of the co-leads on the project, and Ashley Wiseman.
Thank you, Phil. This is Stephanie. Mapping disability inclusion is a project supported by the National Center for Institutional Diversity under their Knowledge Community Grants. It grew out of discussions at DC meetings. Our members had already been trying to identify people on campus who were actively engaged in disability inclusion advocacy and map the existing connections between them. So the grant gave us an opportunity to dedicate time and resources to this work and to make these people and connections more discoverable. So our slide says this project aims to document, connect, and publicize the networks of scholars, practitioners, and advocates working on disability inclusion at the University of Michigan. And it highlights and grows the communities committed to ensuring disabled people's access to physical, digital, and social spaces, and to increase collective responsibility for eradicating ableism. On this project, we worked with digital scholarship specialist, Caitlin Pollock, to build an online prototype of our public directory, which is now live. My co-lead, Ashley Wiseman, is going to tell us about it.
Thank you, Stephanie, and just a very special thank you to Caitlin for all of her help on this project. Our online prototype can be accessed at a link that is shown on the slide, which we will also drop into the chat. The slide also shows a screenshot of a portion of the website homepage with a simple gray and white color scheme and text describing our project. The website currently allows the user to search our database of people at Michigan who are doing disability inclusion work using keywords, department names, departments or names, or title. It also includes additional bios, and each person included their own words about why they do this work. To be included in future updates to the website, you can email us at mdi-leads@umich.edu. And we will also put that into the chat. Next slide, please. So I would like to quickly give you a sense of some other things that our group has done. We've listed some examples of our past cultural advocacy and community building activities. We've had adaptive gaming showcases and hangouts. We've hosted lectures and a lecture and performance by disabled violinist Galen Lee. We have hosted panels on disability culture and inclusion in higher education that have drawn hundreds of attendees. We have circulated petitions for safe, accessible, and equitable pandemic responses at various stages during the pandemic. We have created disability culture, allyhood, and other DEI materials, which we will also drop a couple examples into the chat. The links will take you to a Word document. We hosted Ann Arbor's first Disability Day of Mourning, which memorializes disabled people who have been murdered by family members or caregivers. And we engage in group hangouts and social enrichment events, such as our group attendance at CRIP Camp, the official virtual experience. Next slide, please. Some information about what we are doing now. Our current focuses include advocating for a permanent disability advisory committee within the Office of DEI, and we can go ahead and click. Advocating safe, inclusive, equitable pandemic responses, still. Regular hangouts with each other. We like to have our fun. Your ideas, we are hoping that you will join us for community building, for advocacy work, and for support. And of course, our #1 task and the title of our session today is Embracing Disability Culture at the U of M in pursuit of a disability cultural center. We want to continue to celebrate disability arts on campus, to honor and learn from our history, and to connect with and support each other. What would it mean to have a disability cultural center on campus? How might such a place and such a community impact our campus? I'd like to turn it over to some of our current group members who could be with us here today to share their thoughts on this very question. And we will start with an endorsement from Winter McLeod, who recorded her thoughts on the next slide.
Hi, my name is Winter McLeod. I am a white, cisgendered woman in my mid-20s, wearing a brownish purple dress and big-rimmed black glasses. I have bright red hair with brown roots, and I have a cream-colored plain background behind me. And I want a disability culture center, so we have a place where we can celebrate what makes us unique instead of trying to hide it.
Thank you so much, Winter, for sharing that with us. And I'm now going to ask Stephanie to stop sharing their screen, and I will turn it over to Patricia Anderson. Patricia.
My name is Patricia Anderson. I was assigned female at birth and now identify as non-binary, accepting all pronouns. I am an older white person with fluffy hair that is dark and has a streak of white. I'm wearing a brown fake fur vest, rainbow Hampsa earrings, and my background is a rainbow Celebrate with Pride with the Michigan Medicine and a Block M logo in the corner. When I was in grad school here, I was invited to a Lebanese girls out tonight with the potluck. I showed up with my food in plain jeans, sneakers, and an old maternity blouse, and walked in and saw that everyone else was wearing incredible makeup, high heels, slinky dresses, and diamonds. It was really clear that I did not understand the culture of the space I was standing in. When I walked into the Trotter Center when it opened, there was a feeling that this is a space for people who understand a culture that I don't understand. It was quieter, but it was a similar kind of feeling. When I walk into the Spectrum Center, I have the feeling I'm safe here. People here understand. You can say things and they'll understand it. There's none of the code switching where I talk in a certain way for people who will understand the gay community and a different way for people who don't. In 2018, I was lucky enough to be able to visit the Syracuse University Disability Culture Center. And at night, there was an event for an annual special event. And they had a big catered meal. And I walked in and everyone assumed that I was one of them, that I was part of the community. One person was chatting and said, I'll be back in a few minutes. I'm going off to the quiet room to de-stress. And everyone said, sure, see you in a few minutes. Someone else said, hey, could you come help translate for me? Thanks. Someone else handed me their tray of food and said, I'll be back in a minute. I'd like to keep talking to you. And everyone there felt so safe. They felt that I was safe because anyone in that space was going to be someone who understood what it's like to be a person with a disability. They hadn't met me before. I was from out of town. They didn't know, and they didn't care because this was a safe place. They felt safe. They felt safe that I was safe, and I felt safe. For the first time, I really understood UMichAccess' concept, access intimacy. UMichAccess said, access intimacy is that elusive, hard to describe feeling when someone else gets your access needs. Disability cultural centers are spaces that foster and nurture and embrace access intimacy. I'd like to pass the baton to Pam.
Thanks, Patricia. For me, having a disability cultural center would mean a lot to me. It would be a place where people can gather for community support and resources. It would be a place where everyone is welcomed and included, where I wouldn't feel embarrassed to ask someone to repeat what was said if I have missed it. In my over 20 years of working in the university, I had not met very many people with a disability on campus. I knew they existed, but there was no way for us to connect with each other because we didn't have a means of being able to do that. The day I attended my first student idea board meeting was life-changing for me. I walked into the meeting as a last-minute addition, and there had not been time to set up a co-provider. The group recognized right away that I was struggling to follow the conversation. And someone sat down next to me, opened up the laptop and started typing notes of what was being said. In that moment, I realized I have found my community where our struggles are not a hindrance and that we can work together to make everyone feel included and understood. I opened up my world, and the Disability Cultural Center would do the same for everybody on campus. It would make it possible for people to connect in ways that they have not been able to being spread out across campus. And there's some pretty cool people in this disability community, just say. I'll pass the mic over to Marjorie now. First up.
This is Marjorie again. I wanted to mention briefly that I forgot in my visual description of myself that I am white. I think that's important to note. But to build on Pam's comments, I wanted to speak towards the power of programming and events. I'm a queer student, and I've actually never been to a Spectrum Center event in the whole time that I've been at but knowing that it's there, getting regular updates about it, the fact that there's paid staff members that make sure student communities know they exist, know there's events happening, and know that there is a community there ready and available to them is just so powerful. It's hard to explain because in my field, I wasn't the only queer scholar in my department. I felt like I belonged mostly, but there's always sort of a hint like, maybe I'm not supposed to be here. Maybe I'm not supposed to do that. So just having that physical space I know I could go to or email if I needed has supported me in ways I didn't realize until recently. So I think having a disability cultural center, at least a program and a physical space, would do similar things, and it's really necessary because I worked for the Council for Disability Concerns at which is a wonderful group of disabled people and allies. And I was in that paid role. I was able to come up with all these really interesting intersectional events that we were trying to get to happen for October, which is, Disability Community Month or Disability Awareness Month at And I just wanted to say I'm blown away with the opportunities that are here if we just need someone who's paid and has the ability and time to make sure those events happen. So thank you for listening. I'm going to turn it over to Ashley.
Thank you, Marjorie. Hashtag power of programming. So I would like to talk a little bit about what a DCC at U of M would mean to me. To me, it would mean that our university intentionally builds pathways to accessing disability, culture, and community, rather than leaving it to chance that we find each other on our own. As an advisor to many undergrad students, it would mean that when a disabled student comes to me exhausted from trying to make it all work and full of shame and self-blame when it just doesn't always work, I could show them a place on campus where interdependence prevails, where asking for and giving help is the norm, and they don't have to prove that they can do something alone. A place where they can find multicultural, affirming peer role models, mentors, and resources, wisdom from queer, BIPOC, and other multiply marginalized disabled leaders. A place for collective remembrance of the brave disabled activists who risked arrest and even their lives for civil disobedience, combating everything from institutionalized abuse and eugenics to the right to simply be able to cross the street. A place that exists in crip time. It's okay when we take the time we need for our daily care and for navigating an inaccessible world. A place to build what Patricia described from Mia Mingus called access intimacy. At the U of M DCC, disabled people would claim the right to define themselves, perhaps by reclaiming words like cripple and mad, or perhaps by claiming their own symbols, like the rainbow infinity sign. We could uplift our poets and artists that celebrate our experiences and our body minds. Let's think about the poetry from Leah Lakshmi Pyabshna Samarsingha, a brown, queer, disabled, non-binary femme writer who wrote these words in a poem called Crip Infinity. In the infinite crip crazy future, I am not eliminated and neither are you. We stand, sit, lie, limp, freak out infinite. There are kinds of crazy that we ain't even thought of yet. We are the walking dead, the dead femmes walking. There's nowhere you can hide from seeing all these birth defects. I mean people, I mean us. We really are everywhere, puffing, drooling, stimming. The quality of our pain has changed. because no shame is the most effective anti-inflammatory. A DCC at U of M would demonstrate a sense of duty as a public institution to help all of society unlearn what Carol Gill calls society's relentless instruction in hating disabled body minds. It would make a statement that the University of Michigan does not accept a world that teaches disabled people that they should just want to be normal. At Michigan, we seek to build a world in which everyone knows, affirms, and celebrates disabled people's worth. And I am going to turn it over to Kara.
Good afternoon, folks. Thanks so much, Ashley. My name is Kara Manner. I use she, her pronouns. I am a white person. I'm wearing a burgundy sweater. I have short, dark hair and round glasses. I'm in my apartment, and behind me is a messy bookshelf and a window. As the panel has laid out for you today, the University of Michigan needs a disability cultural center. Not only do disability cultural centers strengthen the work of important entities like SSD, but they do something more. They really get at the fundamental processes, or one of the fundamental processes of ableism, and that is the isolation, segregation, and separation of disabled people. What a DCC does is it says to disabled students, disabled faculty, and disabled staff, we acknowledge the harm that you and your communities have endured. And therefore, we are going to create a space for you to create a sense of belonging, to create multiple understandings of what it means to be in community, and to embrace the great diversity and vibrancy of what it means to show up as a human being in our bodies and in our minds. When I was an undergraduate many years ago at an institution up the road, I showed up as a visibly disabled student, and there were many great resources theoretically available to me. I also showed up as a person laden with internalized ableism. In my youth in school, I often heard the message, well, Kara, you're not like one of them. Generally because I did well academically. What that meant for me as an undergraduate, that I didn't have the language or understanding to name my access needs. I didn't have the language or understanding to name the discriminatory experiences that I was having. And I didn't have the language to understand that I didn't deserve those things. It was only through engaging with other disabled people, being in community with other disabled people, that I was able to learn and understand my experiences through a different lens. Today, folks on the panel have named that as disability justice. That engagement and support from disabled community has been life-changing for me. It has allowed me to continue to claim my evolving access needs as a student and as a person in society. It has also informed the scholarly trajectory that I'm on now, which is to understand how disability is studied in public health. As you've heard from a few folks today, we often in different fields feel like we're the only one. And sometimes that can be very isolating, and it can feel that you have to try to fit in, and therefore you have to move away from or disown your disability. Only through disability community have I been able to shed that harmful and painful logic in order to embrace my insights as a scholar and a disabled person. So in closing, a disability cultural center would not only be incredibly powerful for disabled people at the University of Michigan, it would be incredibly powerful for anyone who engages and interacts with the University of Michigan. And I look forward to the day that I can come to campus and be in community with all the great people on this panel and all the great people that will feel that they can claim the University of Michigan as a space of belonging where they can grow as creative and rigorous scholars. Thank you. And now I will pass it back to Ashley.
Thank you, Kara. So on behalf of all DCUM members, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I'm going to share some information with you, and if someone could drop both our our contact email address in the chat, as well as the link to that sign-up sheet, that would be great. So we have a slide here that has a link for you to sign up to receive updates on disability culture events using a Google form that we're going to drop into the chat. And if a Google form is not accessible to you, or you just prefer to reach out to us about something else, you can contact us at disabilitycultureum@umich.edu. We also hope that you'll be able to join us virtually tomorrow for the 2021 Neubacher Award ceremony, which honors campus and community disability advocates. The virtual award ceremony is again tomorrow at 2 p.m. And you can find the Zoom location at the link that will drop into the chat, which is the Neubacher Award site. We'd also like you to know that all sessions of the Toward an Anti-Ableist Academy conference were recorded and will soon be posted on the conference website. We extend our deepest gratitude to our ASL interpreters, our card provider, our production team, Adi Cornejo and David, to the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and to the Conference Coordinating Committee, especially to Pam McGinty, Dilip Das, and Ronnie Rios, who were the lead coordinators. And one huge final thank you to all of our conference presenters, panelists, introducers, and attendees. We hope you all have a wonderful weekend and take good care.